Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC Fight Night Andrade versus Blanchfield. This was a great card actually, really nice card. There was some portions in it that were a little wonky that almost made it a sleeper card, in air quotes. But this was a really fun card. It wasn't a bad night of fights. 11 night of fights that went by pretty smooth and pretty quickly. So we'll go over some of them. Obviously, there are no injustices. No one got robbed in this fight or on this card. But we'll go through some honorable mentions. First honorable mention is Emmers versus Askabov. I had this 29-28 for Emmers. I gave the last two rounds to Emmers. The first round I gave to Askabov. I thought it was actually kind of close. I'll explain in a second. In that first round, it was kind of close on strikes. They were kind of going back and forth. And as I was counting, I kind of ended up on Askabov having the last strike, which is why I had it for him. It was kind of close on strikes. When I saw the strike numbers, I don't agree with the strike numbers. A lot of the time, I don't agree with the count strike numbers. So there's that. I put a close marker on the first one because again it was so close. It was by one strike that I counted. So that's what I had for the first round. In the second round, Emmers outstruck and dropped Askabov. In the third round, Emmers had 2 takedowns with ground and pound, and he outstruck Askabov. Therefore, it's his round, or therefore it's his fight. The judges' scorecard. All 3 judges had a 30-27. Derek Cleary, Eric Colon, Tony Weeks all had it for Jamal Emmers. I understand that they all had a 30-27, but I really believe that first round was kind of close. I gave it to Askabov, but again, you can argue it either way. Next honorable mention. Sadykhov versus Elder. This fight ended in a doctor stoppage. Elder had a cut above his eye. Doctor stoppage. So this is a TKO doctor stoppage. He had a cut above his eye. Doctor stoppage in the third round. I had the first 2 rounds I gave to Elder, and in my head I was scoring because I don't want to call it close, but it was very competitive. But in my head I knew Elder was winning both rounds. And so when they called this fight, in my head I was just like, I don't want to call it a robbery, but they fucked him a little bit, you know? Like, I understand it's for the safety of the fighter and whatever, but it's been a while since a fight was stopped due to cuts. And the worst part, because in my head when I saw that they stopped this fight, I knew instantly that if the other 3 judges have it 2-0 Elder, this dude just got screwed a little bit. He got screwed. In my head, I'm thinking, again, he didn't get robbed, he didn't get screwed, but he's up 2 rounds. This isn't the same as Masvidal's up 3 rounds on Nate Diaz, or 2 rounds to 1 on one judge's scorecard. No. Elder's up 2 rounds, and the doctor's just like, we have to stop it. What the fuck? It's insane. I don't want to crap on Mark Smith. I'll get on Mark Smith in a second. But Mark Smith is just like the nanny of the octagon. I thought Tyone was the nanny of the octagon. But no, Mark Smith has to be the nanny of the octagon. We'll get to that in a second. Anyways, first round. Elder outstruck Sadykhov. Again, it was kind of close on strikes. Not in the sense that like you didn't know who was winning or not. But like, it was obvious that Elder was outstriking Sadykhov. Both got dropped. The first drop happened to Elder, where it was one of those drops where he gets hit but then goes for a takedown. It's funny. I wonder how they're counting those, because in the last card, in this card, there's these weird things where people get tagged, and instead there was a fight earlier, I believe. Let me finish the thought. People get tagged and they instantly go for a takedown. There was a fight earlier. I believe it was Fletcher versus Gorimbo, where Gorimbo gets dropped. It's either the first or the second round. Gorimbo gets dropped. Okay. But he doesn't get dropped. He gets dropped and then he goes straight into a takedown. He goes straight into grappling. I wonder if judges are counting those, because on my scorecards I'm counting them. They count as drops. It's only very few instances where you don't really count them if the movement and this and that. But anyways, back to the fight. So again, Elder outstrikes Sadykhov. Both get dropped. The first drop happens to Elder, where he gets dropped and he goes into a takedown. And in the second drop is the more impactful drop, where Elder drops Sadykhov. And that's where the round goes to him. In the second round, both had a takedown, but Elder outstruck Sadykhov. And then the third round, they're both hitting each other, and then boom, the stoppage happens due to a cut under his eye. You go to the judges' scorecards. Okay, Adelaide Bird, Saul Diamata, and Junichiro Kamijo all had it the same way as me. The first 2 rounds for Elder, we all three saw it the same. It's insane, right? But boom. I feel like he got screwed in a way. I really do. Next honorable mention is Miller versus Hernandez. I had it 30-27 for Hernandez. I put a close mark on the first round. The weird thing about this first round is it kind of ebbed and flowed, but in the sense you knew that Hernandez was outstriking Miller. I was kind of surprised when I saw that there were some scorecards for Miller. I get it, but again, I put a close marker for a reason, so I guess you could argue the first round for Miller, but still, Hernandez was definitely outstriking Miller. You go to the description I have. Hernandez outstruck Miller in the first round. The second round, the same thing. In the third round, Hernandez again outstruck Miller, and Hernandez had some ground and pound. There was a part where Miller kind of ends up on the ground, and then Hernandez has some ground and pound there in the third round. You go to the judges' scorecards. Okay, Derek Cleary had it 29-28. He gave the first round to Miller. Okay. Eric Colon and Rick Winter both had it 30-27 for Alexander Hernandez. Sorry if I said Aaron Hernandez. We go to the next fight on the card, which is probably the worst fight on the card, but yet a very entertaining fight. It was funny. Knight versus how do you say his name? Prachnio. There we go. Knight versus Prachnio. I had this 30-27 for Prachnio. The reason why I put a start of this is because I think you can actually argue a 10-8 in the second round. In that first round, Prachnio outstruck Knight, mostly leg kicks, if not all were leg kicks. I think he threw a couple jabs that may have touched Knight's chin, but nothing significant. Second round, this is where you can argue the 10-8, right? Because that's the round where you start to see Knight kind of lift his leg up, like, this shit's hurting, and he just keeps going. Prachnio outstruck Knight, again, almost pretty much only leg kicks. Third round, same thing, Prachnio outstruck Knight with almost only leg kicks. This fight was interesting because if you're listening to the commentary, by the way, second time for Lorisenko doing commentary. It's a little mixy. It's a little weird. I guess I'll have to get used to it. But anyways, it's the first time I've been watching fights a lot, and you notice that when a fighter is hesitant to fight, they'll lob up excuses like, maybe he came up with an injury. The leg, right? They were giving Knight some excuses, basically like, he can do anything. He can fly. And man, those leg kicks early are really stunting his movement. Yes, that was true, but then it finally came down where Felder was just like, you know what? Felder just got mad. He got mad in the middle of the commentary. He was like, he's just not fighting. He's just not fighting. And it's rare that you hear that from the commentator, to just all out, I don't want to say crap on the fighter, but just condemn the fighter in the fact that their game plan was to just not be offensive. You know, there's many times in the past, if you're listening to post-fight press conferences where Dana shat on Cyril Gane, right? Where he's like, hey, he should have done more against Rosenstruik. And most people were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Or where he shat on, what's his name? Where he shat on Kevin Holland and he called him Ian McCall, right? Compared him to that boxer who, like, cried in the ring. And most people were like, what the fuck? What do you want? What do you want about? And you look at that one time where he was like, the Ankalaev versus Blachowicz fight was boring, and it's like, okay, Dana just, you can tell Dana just says these things if he doesn't get a certain thing that he wants. That's my interpretation. But this is a perfect example of what Dana should say. Those things that he said about those fighters should be balled up and thrown at night, because this is a perfect example of a fighter literally not fighting. You know, we always talk about, I think it's Dan Severn versus, early UFC days where they just didn't engage or whatever, right? We didn't think we'd ever see one of those again. You see those occasionally with, like, you know, grapplers who don't want to grapple. But this was interesting where you had a fighter just decide, nope, I'm just not going to fight. That was really interesting. So yeah, 30-27 for Prachnio against Knight. You have the next honorable mention, that's Parisian versus Pogues. Pogue? I'm going to say Pogue. I had this 29-28 for Pogue. I gave him the first 2 rounds. Yeah, I gave him the first 2 rounds, and then the last round, it's kind of close, actually. I think you can argue the last round for Parisian. And then I gave it 10-9 to Parisian in the last round. You go to the description. Pogue outstruck Parisian. He had 2 takedowns in the first round. In the second round, it's kind of close on strikes, but Pogue had 2 takedowns. And then the third round, it's close on the feet. It's a little close on the feet. They're kind of going back and forth, landing on each other. Pogue had a takedown, but Parisian had the better ground and pound. Pogue had a takedown. He didn't do much with the takedown. And the Parisian had Pogue's back and did a lot more than Pogue did when he was on top of Parisian. So that's why I gave Parisian the third round. Again, it's close. You can kind of argue for Pogue if you want to. You go to the judges' scorecards. Mike Bell. He had it 29-28. He gave the first round and the last round to Pogue. Okay, that's fine. And then he gives the second round to Parisian. Disagree entirely. Honorable mention to Mike Bell. Junior Kamicha has a 30-27. Tony Weeks has a 30-27. And you have that. You go to the next honorable mention. Wright versus Pauga. I had this 30-27 for Pauga. I put a close marker on the second round, but I still gave the round to Pauga. You go to the descriptions, and Pauga outstruck Wright, mostly clinch strikes. This was the first round was mostly held in the clinch, mostly clinch strikes. At a certain point, at the first half, I was actually thinking I was more focused on Wright. I was like, okay, you know, maybe I might score this for him. You know, that's leading up to Pogue landing elbows and him being consistent in the clinch. Then you go to the second round where I put a close marker here, and in another universe, I probably would have scored this for Wright, but I didn't. But Wright outstruck Pogue in the mostly in the clinch in the second round. But Pogue had the better shots. He had a couple elbows, but they weren't enough to where I believe Wright actually outstruck him and hit him with some better shots. But I actually think it's close. I think you can argue the second round for Wright there. And before I go to the third round, there was a position where, again, Mark Smith involved. Wright was hit in the balls maybe 7 times. I'm joking. It was like 3 times. And I've never seen this before. They call it. It's a foul. And it's universally known that Pogue is going to lose position. Instead, he puts him back. He says in the middle, thank God we have mics in there. He says, you guys both threw at the same time, so I'm going to put you back in the same spot. That doesn't make any fucking sense. It made no sense when I heard it. It still doesn't make any sense now. There's been many times in the past where maybe someone blunders and fucks up and they're like, oh, I got to make up this call. He messed up a call last week, but I don't think this was the right response. Someone gets hit in the balls, so, okay, you both threw, but only one landed. Only one got fouled. It's not as though they both hit each other and then you got to put them back in the same position. Pogue hit him. I don't know if it's Pog or Pogue. Pogue hit him in the balls, separate them, but instead he puts them back in the same position. I'm lost. It makes no sense. You go to the third round. Pogue outstruck and he dropped Wright. Boom, his round. You go to the judges' scorecards. Derek clearly had a 30-27 for Pogue. Saul Diamante also had a 30-27 for Pogue as well. And then Eric Lund had a 29-27 for Pogue. He gave that second round to Wright. I think he saw what I saw. So boom, that's where you get that. And then you go to the main event, which I was expecting this to go maybe a little longer, but congrats to Aaron Blanchfield. Andrade versus Blanchfield. The first round, 10-9 to Blanchfield. And then in the second round, she had a submission. In that first round, Blanchfield definitely outstruck Andrade. When I saw the post-fight, they said Andrade outstruck her 53-51. I think that's a accumulation of the second round strikes as well, because we're for sure that Blanchfield outstruck Andrade in that first round. You go to the judges' scorecards. Mike Bell gives the first round to Andrade. Okay. Saul Diamante and Ginger Camijo give the first round to Blanchfield. I'm not going to give an honorable mention to Mike Bell. Some people also saw for Andrade, so maybe if I watched it like 40 more times, I could probably put myself there. But Blanchfield won the first round, in my opinion. So there's that. Overall, this was a really nice card. Wasn't too shabby. It kind of ended quick. I was happy about that. Now I can go to bed peacefully. Thank you all for listening. Please subscribe. That would greatly help. And God bless.